Chapter 5 of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi is out, and as usual, this video will contain spoilers for it. This week's episode was pretty good and not something you want to have spoiled for you, so we strongly recommend that you watch the episode first before proceeding. We'll be waiting. This episode finally sheds some light on the true motivations of the third sister, who's really been our main antagonist in Kenobi thus far. Her origins didn't come as too much of a surprise, but it was a decent twist to have her planning to betray Vader all along. Of course, anyone who challenges the Dark Lord himself is setting themselves up to get wrecked, and Reva was no exception to this rule. She was decisively beaten by Lord Vader and left to die, but it would seem that she's not dead yet. That's a bit of a trend with dark side characters in Star Wars recently. Evil, it would seem, just never dies. But why was this? Why do Darksiders seem to be able to survive anything unlike Jedi? In this video, we'll be exploring this question.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
In one of our first videos about Kenobi, we criticized the increasing impermanence of death in Star Wars, as exemplified by the fake-out killing of the Grand Inquisitor. As we saw in today's episode, the Grand Inquisitor did indeed survive his wounds, which came as a surprise to exactly no one. Today's episode has added yet another fake death to the pile. This time, we got to see the third sister struck down by Darth Vader, and yet again, she survived what should have been a fatal wound. And not for the first time, it seems, based on that flashback. The writers of Kenobi get credit for not trying to fake us out with this death. Reva never really appeared to die, but we'll see what Chapter 6 does with her character. Just so long as they don't pull an Ahsoka and keep her alive to bring her out in The Mandalorian or whatever, we'll be happy. Don't get us wrong, her character is decent and we wouldn't mind at all to see Moses Ingram in future Star Wars projects, but third sister's gotta die sometime, you know? We're fairly confident Kenobi will end with Reva's death, but it's anyone's guess at this point, because Darksiders seem to be able to survive anything. It's not just a thing in Kenobi. After all, Star Wars The Clone Wars brought back Darth Maul after he was cut in half, which he definitely should not have been able to survive. In both Legends and canon, Emperor Palpatine managed to resurrect himself with clone bodies. Indeed, Darth Vader himself survived wounds that probably should have killed him. This stands in stark contrast to the Jedi, who just don't seem to be able to survive nearly as much. We've seen Jedi survive a lot, but never as much as Vader or Maul endured. Does this mean the dark side is stronger after all? The short answer is no. The long answer is that it's a bit complicated. Palpatine once said that the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some would consider to be unnatural. He was right, and among the unnatural abilities that came with the dark side were quite a few ways to cheat death. Cheating death was a fundamental goal of the dark side. Death was the ultimate obstacle to everything that Darksiders craved, the only thing that prevented their power and strength from enduring forever. It was the one enemy that could never be defeated, the only thing that Dark Jedi and Sith Lords alike could only stave off, not crush beneath them. Death was, in a sense, the greatest enemy of any student of the dark side. As a result, a great many Darksiders tried to find ways to make sure they were the exception to Death's unbreakable rule. It was a mania that consumed many great Sith Lords of old. The title Darth, in fact, is an allusion to this ultimate goal. In Legends, it was said that Darth derived from the Rakatan title Dar-Tar, meaning conqueror of death. Speaking of legends, two ancient Sith Lords shed some light on how the dark side could keep its users alive. The first was Exar Kun, who, while still a Jedi, found himself on Korriban, where he was fatally wounded by the Tomb Guardians of the ancient Sith. Kun tried to draw on the light to save him, but it could not. Perhaps the taint of the Valley of the Dark Lords was too great, or perhaps it was not the Force's will. Taunted by the spirit of the Sith Lord Freedon Nad, Kun drew on the dark side instead, and to quote the comic this tale comes from, what kind of healing can come from the dark side of the Force? Exar Kun's fractured bones knit and strength returns, but nothing is as it was before. Exar Kun drew on the dark side to save his life, and he found himself unable to turn away from it afterward. Once he chose the dark side, it corrupted him and he could never escape it. Healing, usually, is a light side Force ability. The will of the Force, which guides lightsiders, nurtures life, and when channeled, can allow to persevere through severe injuries. But when it was someone's time to die, the light side couldn't always help them. If their death was the will of the Force, then channeling it wouldn't help. But the dark side didn't rely on the will of the Force. More often than not, it defied it. Darksiders didn't care what the Force willed. They bent the universe to their will, made the Force obey them. This is why the dark side had a better track record of bringing beings back from death. Our final example, another legend Sith Lord, took cheating death to an extreme. His name was Darth Sion, the Lord of Pain, and he went through worse than every character we've mentioned so far combined. Sion had been fatally wounded thousands of times. His flesh was cracked, charred, and deeply scarred all over. His right eye was burned pale, and raw muscle peeked through the tears in his skin. Every last one of his bones had been shattered and then forced back together. Sion didn't just keep himself alive through the Force, he physically held his broken body together. He lived like this for years as well. Sion's condition meant that he was always in unimaginable pain, but this pain was actually what gave him the strength to keep himself alive. That and his constant boiling fury. He lived, as he once said, to inflict the pain on others, to turn Jedi into mirror images of himself. His rage and his pain were so great that he could survive anything. He could die 1,000 times, and each time he would get right back up, unfazed. With that said though, Sion was defeated in the end, and his death shed some light on why the Sith went to such extremes to cheat death while the Jedi did not. Sion was defeated in the end when Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, eroded his will to keep going, essentially talking him into letting himself die. Before Sion allowed himself to die, however, Surik asked whether it had all been worth it, to which Sion responded that it was not.
No matter how many I killed, there was no end to the pain. The blades the Force tore through my flesh. You have defeated me. Flesh and belief both cast down.
The belief that Sion's talking about here wasn't just his will to live, it was his allegiance to the dark side. As Sion knew full well, the dark side promised him everything he wanted: unlimited power, eternal victory, life everlasting. But it all came with a price, a particularly terrible one in Sion's case. And in the end, it was all meaningless. The dark side could keep Sion alive forever, but the sacrifices Sion had to make to get to that point left him with nothing to live for. It had left him empty, a shell of a man, driven only by meaningless bloodlust. That was the trap of the dark side. The power it offered, infinite though it was never enough to satisfy. It was an empty road to hell. The Jedi's answer to this was something many Sith could never understand: acceptance. The reason the Jedi didn't cheat death nearly as often as the Sith was because they didn't feel the need to. To the Jedi, death wasn't really a bad thing, at least on its own. It was inevitable, a fate that would befall all life, and it meant union with the cosmic force. Yoda once advised Anakin Skywalker to rejoice for those around him who merged with the Force, and that wasn't just some cheap attempt to get Anakin to feel better about Padme. The spirits of the dead became one with the Force, becoming a part of the great cosmic will, abandoning their individuality to become part of the great spiritual collective of the universe. The Jedi welcomed this fate, and that is why they didn't try to run from death when it came for them. They were lightsiders and they accepted the will of the Force. But for darksiders, who were individualist in the extreme, merging with the Force and losing their individuality was a fate worse than death itself. In universe, it was said that Sith Lords went to a place called Chaos or Hell when they died, but in truth, the Sith's hell may have just been a different interpretation of the Jedi's eternal peace. The Jedi embraced the inevitable end of the individual, knowing that the greater whole would live on, while the Sith lived their lives in denial of this, terrified of the end. The Sith may have been able to survive virtually anything, but in the end, it was the Jedi who were stronger. Next week, we'll see if Reva has learned that lesson. But what do you think? Are you excited for the Kenobi finale? What do you think of the series so far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in next week's video.